Go ahead and get started here in the room with the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. I want to welcome those of you that are here, and again, those joining us virtually via Zoom or on the phone. Thanks for taking time out of your busy lives this morning to come be with us. We've worked hard to accommodate this in-person and hybrid participation, and so we may encounter some hiccups along the way, so we will certainly appreciate your patience and understanding as we go forward. For those that just joined us virtually, if you're having any trouble, please again reach out using that chat feature, and you can find that at the bottom of your screen. So I'm Erin from EPA Region 4 in Atlanta, Georgia, and I am the moderator for today's meeting. In Region 4, I serve as an emerging contaminants coordinator, which means many of the issues I'm involved with center around new science and involving information that the agency has learned could be impacting public health and the environment. Sometimes the science is so new that our agency doesn't have rules yet in place or regulations. And in those moments, we are actively engaging with stakeholders, community, and our co-regulators to move towards solutions. That's exactly the kind of space we're in today. So I'm thankful that all of you have come here so that we can give you background on an important your community, discuss our agency's planned next steps, and most importantly, be able to answer your questions. We've gathered here today at Walters State Community College. This location is the neighborhood that is impacted by the air pollution, and we want to acknowledge and further explain the risk that exists in the community. For several reasons that my colleagues will describe today, this could be a tough issue, and I want to acknowledge that this may not be an easy conversation that we're going to have. I want to talk about the flow of this meeting so you can know what to expect and be prepared to ask questions at the appropriate time. Today, you will hear from the Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation's Deputy Director, Greg Young, also EPA Region 4 Administrator, Daniel Blackman, EPA Region 4 Air and Radiation Division Director, Caroline Freeman, and the Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation Air Pollution Control Division Director, Michelle Owenby. We'll also have a panel of technical experts available for our Q&A, including our partners at the Agency for Toxic Substances and Disease, or ATSDR, and also TDEC as well will be a part of that panel. We're going to address questions this morning once our speakers have shared their information. And when the time for the Q&A comes, we'll first take questions from those of you here in the room, and then we'll try to get to our Zoom or phone participants as well. As a moderator, I'll try to keep us on target, make sure your questions are answered, and this may mean I ask you to clarify your question or ask our speaker anything that I feel is unclear. Our team today here is prepared to talk about the one issue on air pollution impacting this community, but if we don't know an answer to any other questions, we'll do our best to follow up. It's very important to us that we do that. Next slide. So if we don't get to your question, please know that you can always email us at this email address, region4eto@epa.gov, or call us at 800-241-1754. We're recording this session as well. We'll make these slides available, and they'll be available on this website on this slide. So you can refer back to it at your convenience or pass it along to anybody who was either this morning or this evening. And that website link, again, will host the meeting's content. So I want to highlight that we do have with us today Claiborne County Mayor Joe Brooks. So thank you so much for being available as we prepare to be on the ground here and for your participation with us here today. And with that, I'm going to turn it to Greg Young, who's the Deputy Commissioner for the Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation. Greg's been in this role since 2019, and prior to that, he had 18 years of experience practicing environmental law here in Tennessee. TDEC is a critical partner with EPA in our common mission to protect health and the environment. So I'd now like to turn it to Deputy Commissioner Young for his welcoming remarks.
Thank you, Erin. Good morning. And I was really scared you were about to read my full bio, and I was going to just nip that in the bud. So thank you for having us here. Thank you, Mayor Brooks, for hosting us. Really appreciate that. Thank you to the folks at Walters State for having us here. Again, my name is Greg Young. I'm the Deputy Commissioner for the Bureau of Environment at TDEC. What that means is I get to oversee all the environmental programs for the state of okay. And so really in a lot of ways, the buck stops with me. And so I'm offering that to you as members of the community to let you know that I am here today to learn and listen and hopefully our folks will be able to provide some very good information to you. Did we have any other elected officials, Mayor? Okay. Well, if you are an elected official, sir. Oh, okay. Very good. Very good. Well, thank you for being here. Tell me your name. Mr. Lewis, Jeffrey Lewis, New Tazewell, Tazewell City Council. New Tazewell. Okay. All right. Very good. All right. Well, thank y'all. Ma'am. Very good. Okay. See, sometimes you just got to ask folks, hey, are you an elected official? So would all the elected officials please raise your hand and introduce yourself? I did not get a oh, good, good. Tell me your name. Rebecca, thanks for being here. Sir, tell me your name. Tell me your name. I'm sorry, I can't hear. Thank you. Yeah, y'all just bear with me here. Well, thank you to all the city officials, county officials, elected officials, bookkeepers, for letting us be here and talk a little bit about this. One thing that before I continue, I want to highlight our colleagues at EPA and let you know kind of how that relationship goes between the state and the federal government. That's okay, Mike. Oh, sorry. No, we have a very good working relationship with the US EPA, and the way things work is that the federal government puts out standards a lot of times, and it's up to the states that are delegated authority to implement those standards to actually help carry those things out. And so it has to be a close, they call it cooperative federalism, okay? A close cooperative federalism type of scenario between the federal and the state government. And that's how we work with you probably heard the term co-regulators, okay? And so that's how we work together with the EPA. I can't say enough good things about Regional Administrator Daniel Blackman. I've had the joy of knowing him for about a year now. We've worked together on. Daniel, can you please stand up and just, I'm not going to ask for a round of applause, but this is a good man. We are fortunate to have him heading up our region out of Atlanta. I think you're going to be impressed with him, as I know I am. Other EPA officials I want to recognize are Caroline Freeman. She's the head of the air group down there in Atlanta. She's the brain trust, okay? Not to be outdone by some good folks at TDEC that I'm going to brag on a little bit. I have Michelle Walker, O&B here, who is our head of air, who y'all have been introduced to. And then last but not least, Jill Pratt, who handles a lot of air permitting. So as you can see, and I'm sorry, I'm going to mess up some of the other health agency folks. Y'all will hopefully be able to themselves. But we've got I'm listing all these. It is important to your governmental entities to be here to provide information and answer questions, okay? And we take this very seriously, and that's why we're here. That's why we're here with so many people at so many high levels. What our job is really to protect human health and the environment, okay? At the end of the day, that's what EPA does. That's what And as part of that, there's really kind of three principles that I'll just give you a heads up that we're going to try to maintain throughout this process. The first one is we're going to look at the science, the facts, and the law in situations like this, okay? This is a situation where the science is evolving. There's some emerging science, okay? So what we need to be able to do is make sure we understand that, make sure we understand where you are, who you are, the facts of the situation, and then take appropriate regulatory or legal action, the law, science, facts, and law. If we can get it right on the science, the facts, and the law, 9 times out of 10, we're going to do a good job at what we do. Second principle, in order to protect human health and the environment, you have to have robust public engagement. That's what this is, okay? And it cannot be Greg or TDEC or EPA just talking, and I'm sorry, I'm talking a lot now, but it has to be listening to. And so we not only want to provide information, we want to listen to your concerns, understand what those concerns are, and keep doing that throughout the process. So public engagement, meeting people where you find them, that's why we're here. Last is something that is important to me personally. It's just public service, okay? You all are my boss. At the end of the day, you know, EPA, TDEC, other agencies are here to serve the public. And that is a commitment that we take very seriously. And so just know that your voice will be heard. You are our bosses. Matter of fact, it's not going to be and I'll close with this. This is not going to be the only time you hear from us. Okay. From TDEC standpoint, we are in your community. We are Tennesseans as well. Okay. So we are here today. We're going to be here tomorrow. And for the future discussions that will inevitably arise on this issue, we will be here. If you need to call us, don't hesitate. We've set up some contact information on this issue that you can use and reach out to us. I'll give you the quick web link. It's called ask.tdeceto@tn.gov. I'm going to repeat that, and hopefully we can list it out there for you at some point. Again, ask.tdeceto@tn.gov. Thank you for letting us be here again. And with that, I'm going to turn it over back to Aaron. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Commissioner Young. With that, I am going to turn it over now to EPA Region 4 Administrator Daniel Blackman. In his role, he oversees our agency's goals of protecting human health and the environment here in the Southeast. For those of you that don't know, Region 4 represents the 8 states, including Tennessee, and 6 federally recognized tribes. Regional Administrator Blackman is a passionate leader who has dedicated his career to economic opportunities for marginalized communities throughout the South and working to ensure a healthy environment for all, not just a select few. All right, Blackman, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. It's haven't had a chance to follow Greg. Good to see you. And to the state, Mr. Mayor, I appreciate your service. And we can't agree enough with the fact that public engagement is absolutely critical, not only to our region, but to communities that too often are left out of the conversation. And one of the things that I think is very important for you all to know before I start my comments is that transparency matters to us. It matters, data matters, regardless of if we agree or not. I think it's important for transparency and communication, which is why myself and my staff is here. Before I get started, I want to say thank you to all of you that have come and those of you that represent families and communities and the workforce here in the city, but also to our law enforcement that's here. And more importantly, I want to thank my staff that helps us every day to make sure that in community engagements and opportunities like this, we're able to communicate and share information, but also answer questions that, you know, oftentimes are challenging for us, but necessary. Again, as it was mentioned, my name is Daniel Blackman. I'm coming up on the actual year of service to Region 4. And again, it includes of the 8 states. Tennessee is one of those states. You know, on the way coming in today, there was a gentleman named Ricky Sanford that I met, and he came and got some information, and he was walking out, he had a brace on his knee. And, you know, me and my social personality, asked him if he was a resident. He said he had been a lifelong resident, 53 years here, was waiting for his wife to come pick him up. And he told me that my office shared some information with him. And in sharing that, I said, what was most important about being here today? And he said his 18-year-old daughter. I am a father, and it's important for me as much as I have to be away from my family to be in communities. I think we would all agree that our children, our grandchildren, and those who are more important than anything else. And I hope that the information we share can help to protect those communities and the legacies that we've provided for our families and our children. Not only are we here because of sharing information, but this is an unprecedented time of access, equity, and leadership. And it's symbolic in this place that we show up in areas that aren't always areas that get the most attention. One of the aspects of infrastructure funding and resources includes focusing in on rural and underserved communities and making sure that we are bringing information to communities that have not always had that opportunity. This administration's been aggressively implementing programs and initiatives embedded not only in environmental justice and awareness, but also in civil rights, equity across government. We have a whole of government approach. So while we are here representing today, we work with various agencies throughout the region. We work with HHS, we work with HUD, we work with all the federal family. And our goal is to have a working relationship that allows our work with folks like Greg and state partners throughout the region to be as robust as possible so that we're not reinventing the wheel, and that our posture when we come into communities like this is to listen, to understand, not just to respond. I think it's important for us to know that it is just as important for us to present, all to know who we are, as much as it is to be able to hear your concerns and to get your input and feedback so that we can make the best decisions and communicate better along the process. Today's meeting is an example of the efforts that we've tried to last several months. EPA, just so you know, is stepping outside of our traditional role of proposing a rule, which traditionally has been not as engaging as we would like to be. And that's not the point of finger. It's just that we recognize and understand that we can't just check a box. We have to conduct meetings that allow each and every one of your voices to be heard, those of you here in person and those of you online, so that we can make sure that in the process, you all are not being bought in at the tail end of a conversation. We want you all to know in real time when we get information, we're able to share it with you, but also hear from you and listen and understand, which includes taking time to learn about the rules and the feedback that is important. And that's the intersection. The rules that we are presenting, what is changing, but also the feedback and the engagement from communities like this, which is what Greg really mentioned earlier. Public comment opportunities, public engagement, community involvement is where we want to be, and we want to make sure it's embedded throughout our region. This process that we're trying to focus on today and that we're presenting a challenge to you now before the rulemaking process begins so that you can be informed not only about how this issue impacts you, but also your family. And also, we want to put you in a position to make the best decision for your families and for your communities. I do not take it lightly that after our meetings today and this evening, many of us in our region, we leave and we go back to our homes and our families. This is your home, and we respect that. And we are here passing through to make sure that you see us as partners and allies working very hard to communicate with you, because each of your voices deserve to be heard. And we know that there are going to be some concerns and some questions, and we hope this is a marathon and not just a sprint. We want to make sure that you all know that we're here for the long run, and we're going to continue to communicate with you across the board. I want to thank the agencies that are partnering here with us, the Agency for Toxic Substances and the Disease Registry, and the Tennessee Department of Environmental, TDEC, Environment and Conservation. Again, this is a new approach for us at EPA, and we're grateful that those that we work with closely can ensure a fair implementation of environmental laws and protect the public health and environment that have been coordinating with us throughout this process. And again, when we have these conversations, our goal is to make sure that you all feel as committed and a part of the process as possible. Today we're here to talk about air pollution from a chemical called ethylene oxide, EtO, which you'll hear more about. Some of you have heard and seen some images and information in the back. And as my colleagues will discuss with more detail, ethylene oxide can cause health risks and also is an important chemical to ensure the safety of a wide variety of medical devices. And we want to make sure that you all understand that more than anything else, the usage, the challenges, but also the information that we have as it relates to these medical devices and how they're used by doctors, hospitals, and dentists. Chemical is used in a type of facility known as a commercial sterilizer. And there are about 100 commercial sterilizers around the country, and some of them are emitting ethylene oxide into the outdoor air at a level that is concerning to myself, to our region, and the entirety of EPA. And this is exactly why the Biden administration has sent conversations to coordinate and communicate that message with you. This includes the DeRoyal Industries facility here in New Tazewell. As I stated earlier, this is only the beginning of one conversation, of this conversation. And EPA is sharing this information now so that you have access to the same information that we have at EPA and can make those informed decisions about the risks to you, your health, your communities, and again, those who you represent, family members and friends that many of you may or may not have grown up with. We're committed to keeping you informed throughout this process at every step, and information on how to contact us, if it has not already been shared with you, will be shared so that you can continue to reach out to us and get more information as it comes. And I'll confess, as a regional administrator, one of the things that's important for me is to learn as much about the communities that we get to come to as much as we share the information. So while you all have questions, we're in a posture of listening and understanding as well. First, the risk and proportions to New Tazewell, we want to let you know high. And I do not want to shy away from our findings and our concerns. And EPA is extraordinarily concerned about this risk. Second, we're committed to protecting the health in communities facing risk from ethylene oxide, and we are taking this issue very seriously. We commit to you today that we will continue to work on the issue until the risks are reduced, which is very, very important, and it's a priority of ours. These risk levels that we want to make sure are reduced include using the tools that have been made available to us here at EPA, such as regulations and on-the-ground partnerships, many of which hope to work with those who are elected officials, with community organizations and representatives. And we want to make sure that we're doing this with these on-the-ground partnerships, and it includes the communities, but it also includes the facilities and anyone who can work with us to help reduce these risks. These partnerships have already reduced risk in a number of communities, but we're not in any way, shape, or form going to shy away from that. We know that while this is a big step and we want to have you all involved in the process, we still have our work cut out for us as good partners, as an agency, but more than anything else, as members of our own communities that want to see communities like our own do well. Third, each and every one of you that are in here today and that are listening virtually, you deserve to be a part of this process, to have your voices heard, your concerns shared, and your needs met. In 1957, there was a Pierce Albright report that came out in the state of Tennessee, and this report spoke specifically about making sure that parts of the state of Tennessee, just like this, were educated. And that's why we're here. It's not just about making sure that we're communicating across the board with you, but your voices being heard makes this community stronger, more educated, more aware, but also better apt for the information that we will continue to share with you throughout this process. You can also find more details about everything that we'll talk about today, including how to make your voice more heard. You can find more information on EPA's website. You can learn about how to contact us by phone or by directly emailing. And on behalf of Region 4, the Biden administration, and our entire slate of partners, organizations, we do thank you. We know how valuable your time is. We know how important it is for you to take time out of your day and to represent those that, again, represent your families and your community. And I want to say personally, thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to help you make your own informed decision as we work together throughout this process. At this time, I'll turn it back over to Aaron, and we look forward to a robust conversation.
Thank you, Regional Administrator Blackman. I just want to pop in really quick here. We've had a bunch of folks join online. So for those of you who have joined, if you're thinking of questions you want to ask, please use that Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. And again, just since you missed the earlier announcements, we are recording this session. So it'll be available later, and we will post it to our new Tazewell ETO web. At this point, I want to introduce Caroline Freeman, who oversees a team of technical experts working on air issues in Region 4. Caroline works closely with local, tribal, and state governments like TDEC in industry and others to achieve and maintain clean outdoor air, including reduction of exposures and risks associated with criteria and hazardous air pollutants like the ethylene oxide risk that we're talking about today from the commercial sterilizer in your community. Caroline, I'll turn it to you.
Okay, thank you, Erin, and good morning, everyone. Today I will be sharing information with you about the risk that's posed by ethylene oxide. Can everyone hear me okay? Okay, about the risk that's posed by ethylene oxide from DeRoyal in your community and the actions that are already being taken, as well as those actions that are underway. Today I'm going to be sharing a lot of information with you, but I also realize that it's important for you to get answers to any questions that you may have. And so we have dedicated a half of the agenda laid out for today to ensure that we provide an opportunity for you to ask those questions and be a part of the conversation to ensure that, we actually work through this together. Secondly, I want to share from my perspective what the three main takeaways are from today's meeting. And the first, of course, is to inform you of this risk here in New Tazewell from DeRoyal. The second, of course, is to let you know about what it is that EPA, this is in the form of regulations, of course, and we are working with our co-regulators, and that is our partners with the Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation. Also, we're trying our best to work with the facility and reduce this risk, because that's the only way that we will be able to get control of the risk that's been identified here in the New Tazewell community. Third, you deserve to be a part of the process. And so in order to do that, that's why we're here today, to inform you as far as what we have learned about ethylene oxide and to give you that opportunity to know when our regs will be coming out. Also advise you of the public participation process so that you can weigh in on that process as well. There's a lot more information that is available online. And if you did not pick up a fact sheet on the way in, please be sure to do so that you will be able to have access to that website. Before we get into the details, just want to repeat something that Erin shared earlier. She started the meeting, and that is the presentations that I will be going through and speaking to you with today. And it could be a little frustrating, but at the same time, I ask your patience and just let me get through this information. We have a team of experts that we're going to bring to the front, and we're going to sit here and we're going to answer every question that you have before we walk out of this facility today and then back again this. So, just bear with me. It's a lot of information, a lot of technical jargon that will come from some of these presentations, but at the same time, if in fact there's something that we need to explain in a different way, we are definitely here to do that, and we're not going to leave with question marks in your minds. Okay, so you've already heard for the most part that we're talking about air pollution from a chemical called ethylene oxide, which we often refer to as EtO. Occasionally people call this EO as well as EtO, ethylene oxide. Nevertheless, they're all the same thing, okay? With that being the case, I need you to understand what ethylene oxide is. It is a gas, and you usually cannot smell it, or ethylene oxide, pretty much for the amount that we have identified in the communities surrounding these commercial sterilizers. It's not a gas that you can can just walk around and smell. Ethylene oxide, of course, is used to kill bacteria and other germs. And so specifically, it is used in the medical equipment, as well as sterilizing spices. DeRoyal Industries uses ethylene oxide to sterilize orthopedic devices, surgical equipment, wound care kits, and other medical supplies. As it stands right now, there is no information to suggest that ethylene oxide is coming out of this facility into the water or onto the ground in any way that could cause risk. The ethylene oxide that we're talking about today is coming out of this facility as air pollution. When it comes to short-term benchmarks, as far as health impacts, we haven't seen any evidence that ethylene oxide from this facility causes urgent or acute health risks such as nausea, dizziness, and breathing problems. This is an important point because the science we have done only points to risk from long-term exposure. And I got to be clear on that. The science that EPA has looked at is based on long-term exposure. Our best current knowledge of what is happening at this facility is based on the modeling that we did. Generally, as a consumer, you do not need to be concerned about risk from ethylene oxide that may be left over on products that were sterilized with ethylene oxide. Again, for the most part, the risk that we are concerned about is to people who live near and work at these facilities that use ethylene. So if this, if these are the things that we aren't worried about, then what are we truly concerned? Okay, and what we have learned for the most part is that ethylene cause cancer when people are exposed over a long period of time. Specifically, it can cause breast cancer and lymph as well as blood cancers. By long periods, we're talking about someone who lives near this facility that have been breathing in ethylene oxide emissions at that current concentrated level for a period of birth to age 70. As far as special considerations about this risk, certain people are more at risk to ethylene oxide than others. And this can either happen because they spend more time in that area where the higher concentrations exist, or their bodies could be more. I will talk more about this in a moment, but because we know that children are more vulnerable, and when we did this analysis, we did take that into consideration. Now I want to provide a little bit more of a national context on ethylene oxide and the work that we're doing at EPA. As you heard earlier from our regional administrator Blackman, there are about 100 commercial sterilizers across the country. You can see, if you're looking at the map that's displayed behind me, the blue dots show the location of 23 of those commercial sterilizers where we anticipate the risk to be the highest for people who live near these facilities. DeRoyal Industry is one of those 23 facilities with the highest level of risk. We're focusing the conversation today on this facility because we believe that there is a higher risk to people who live nearby. But I want to be clear that this is also potential risk, that there is also potential risk to the people who actually work at these facilities who actually work nearby this facility. And not only that, but those who actually go to school nearby. Well, we're considering the 100 sterilizers that I mentioned earlier when we think about these issues as far as proposing solutions in our regulations. It's not just DeRoyal, we're looking at all 100 of those commercial sterilizers. The information that we're sharing today and that we have posted on the web is all based on information that we have collected from these facilities about their use of ethylene oxide. EPA receives new data, as we're moving forward. As that new data comes in, we will make that information available on our website. And if we learn of steps that DeRoyal is taking to reduce their risk from our coordination efforts with our co-regulators at TDEC, that information is shared on our website. As far as individual risk considerations, I will now share a few things with you about, if you are trying to understand what our conversations about risk might mean to you and your family. When we think about risk at EPA, we think about those risks at a population level. And we make a lot of assumptions about the risk and the ways that people could potentially be exposed. EPA's way of thinking about risk isn't always easy into what you might need to know if you want to know about individual levels or potential risks to your family. So in general, if you want to understand your family's risk, there are about 3 things that you really, really need to know. And that is, number 1, how close they are to the facility. Number 2, how much ethylene oxide is coming out of the facility. 3, how long have they been exposed, both in terms of the hours of time that they're in the neighborhood or near the facility. The Environmental Protection Agency right now is working on the second bullet, which is to reduce ethylene oxide that are coming out of these facilities. Because we think that the best way to reduce risk as we move forward and to make the community safer is to reduce the amount of emissions that are coming out. But for the most part, I want you to know that those 3 issues are very important when we're trying to determine risk as it relates, yourselves or your family. Now I'm going to share a little more detail about the analysis that we have done and have completed and what that tells us about this particular. Between 2021 and 2022, scientists collected and analyzed the best information available for the industry's facility. EPA then combined that data with local information like weather patterns and the location of homes. Using those factors, we at the EPA was able to model the risk of ethylene oxide. I want to note that, the EPA's analysis only reflects your potential exposure risk related to ethylene oxide from the DeRoyal Industries facility. Therefore, the risk that I am sharing information about today is an additional or incremental long-term risk for getting certain types of cancers from ethylene oxide that we have modeled. As I shared earlier, to estimate the risk, there are 3 things you need to always be focused on, and that is how toxic the chemical is, how much is in the air, and third, how long an individual has been exposed. Because EPA's analysis must be protective of human health, These estimates are very conservative and they are on the high end. What does this mean? This means that we assume that people spend all of their time in where there is risk. And that specifically means that we assume for 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, from birth to age 70, where this individual stays in that location and they are breathing in oxide emission at the current exposure level. For the most part, that might not be a realistic assumption because almost everybody leave their home at some point in time. But these assumptions help us to ensure that, for the most part, as we are moving forward with our regulatory development, that we protect the most vulnerable, even in the most extreme situation. Okay. Now I'm going to share with you a Google Street Map of your community with some landmarks to provide you with a better view of the area that's impacted by the model risk from the DeRoyal Industries. The impacts extend from DeRoyal commercial sterilization facility to approximately a half mile in either direction, northward and southward, along State Highway 33, beginning at New Hope Road to the southwest near Sunrise Missionary Baptist Church and ending at Cumberland Gallery Street to the northeast near the Walmart. And you can actually see that area on this map on the floor that's positioned up here by me as well. Now I'm going to transition to the gradient map, okay? The gradient map displayed on this slide is used to show each ethylene oxide risk from DeRoyal Industries. I would also preference that we believe that there is elevated risk to people who live closest to DeRoyal Industries. But I want to be clear that there's also a potential risk, again, to people who actually work at this facility, near this facility, and those who go to school near it as well. Now I want to point out a few features on the map. And as you look at this map, the dark orange box is the facility itself. The lighter orange area is a residential area near the facility where risks are high. And the blue area includes residential areas where risks are at or above our benchmark of. In the blue area, the darker shading reflects high risk and the lighter shading lower risk, albeit still all above 100 in a million. Note that as you move away from the facility, the blue shading gets a little bit lighter, meaning that the risk is getting lower. There is some uncertainty in these estimates as both operations at the facility and weather can change, but these are the best health protective estimates that we have available to us. At the EPA, we are concerned about all risk, but we use that 100 in a million, as I said earlier, as our benchmark for identifying whether risk levels are considered high. When we say 100 in a million, we're saying that we estimate ethylene oxide exposure could contribute to an increase of 100 cancer cases if 1 million people were exposed at that concentrated level for 24 hours a day, from birth to age 70. We start our calculations at birth because we want to make sure that we are protective of children. Under the Clean Air Act, we focus on risk where people live. We are also concerned about the risk to workers and others who might spend part of their time at light orange shaded area or non-residential area and in the facility itself. But this analysis that we're talking about today, that we're sharing information, only focus on residential areas. This information that we are sharing is also posted on the web, and it is all based on information that the EPA has collected from the DeRoyal sterilization facility about their ethylene oxide use. As we receive new data, it is our goal, as I said, to continue to update the website and make that. Not only that, but as we learn any type of modification that DeRoyal will or proposes to make to their facility, we update that information on the website to make it available. Well, but like I said, we are very concerned about the risk in your community, and that's why we're here today. Next, I'm going to share with you some recent steps that the EPA has taken to reduce risk from commercial sterilizers thus far, and how you can get involved. While we have only understood the risk here in New Tazewell since we completed our work at the end of July of this year, we have been working on this issue for some time. The EPA has had regulations in place, oxide emissions, for about 30 years now. And those regulations can be found at 40 Code of Federal Regulations, Part 63, for the National Emission Standards for Hazardous Air Pollutants, Subpart O for commercial sterile. Those regulations were put in place. The last update was 1996. In 2016, because of updated science, we learned that ethylene oxide was more dangerous when you breathe it in. In 2018, a national level analysis provided an initial of which areas might be at higher risk, but it was not detailed enough either to inform our regulations or to really help communities. So we needed to collect additional information, learn more about exactly where these risks are located and what solutions are available to prevent these risks. That work took about 2 years, and that brings us to where. I also want to note that while the EPA recently know the exact details of potential risk here in New Tazewell, EPA do understand now that the risk has potentially been occurring in your community for as long as this facility has been utilizing ethylene oxide as a sterilizer in its process. To be clear, our risk estimate presents current, not historical conditions, because in some cases, this is the only information we have as a result recently collected from the facility. So it also informs, the direction that the agency with setting stronger regulations in place for commercial sterile. Now I want to take this time to just step back for a minute to explain exactly where the pollution is in fact coming from within the facility, because this information is also important to understand how solutions can be put in place to reduce risk. There are two types of ways that ethylene oxide can leave a facility. The first is that after ethylene oxide is used to sterilize things, it is sucked into a control system. These systems actually clean ethylene oxide of the air and captures it or break it down before releasing a much, much smaller amount. This type of ethylene coming out of a facility is called control emissions. DeRoyal has controls on several of their processes at their facility. However, their sterilization chambers and primary aeration rooms are controlled and pass through control devices that are required by the state and federal permits and standards. This second type of ethylene oxide that does not get sucked into a control system is ethylene oxide that escapes through other places. And when I talk about other places, it could be from leaks, it could be escaping through gaps, cracks in the building, leaving out of the windows and even doors. And this escaping ethylene oxide is also referred as what we call fugitive emissions. And so fugitive emissions, unfortunately, are not covered under the current regulations that I spoke to earlier. Because that regulation, when it was written, we did not realize the importance of the fugitive that would be coming off of these sterilized supplies. At DeRoyal, the majority of risk is from the escaping emissions, or like I said earlier, the fugitive. And when you put that in perspective, we're talking about 13% of the emissions are coming through the control staff versus 87% of the uncontrolled emissions are the fugitive that are leaving through the doors and the windows or cracks in the buildings. Now I want to talk about reducing these risks. As I said earlier, the best way to reduce the risk is to reduce the amount of currently not regulated ethylene oxide fugitive emissions that is coming out of this facility. Unfortunately, there are not many actions that you personally can take to reduce risk because for the most part, this is not a chemical that you can easily remove with a home air filter or completely reduce your risk by just staying inside. However, I will say that spending less time near would definitely reduce your risk. But again, the best solution is to reduce the amount of ethylene oxide that is coming out of this facility. We have also learned that ethylene oxide is not a chemical that lasts for a long time in the environment. This means that reducing the amount of ethylene coming out of the facility will also reduce the risk in the neighboring community right away. Next slide, please. The EPA is taking action on the amount of ethylene oxide out of this facility, others like it. And at EPA, we are updating our air pollution regulation that limits how much commercial sterilizers like DeRoyal can put into the air. And also the EPA expects to propose the updated air pollution regulations in the coming months. At this time, there will be a public comment period. And that public comment period should last somewhere between 60 to 90 days. Also, there will be at least one virtual as well. Regulations often take about a year before they become final, once they have been proposed and the public comment period closes. Once the regulation is final under the Clean Air Act, those new facilities that are coming online for the very first time will have to comply immediately with those new. However, for those facilities that have been operating, which we refer to as existing facilities, there is a compliance period of up to 3 years. EPA does plan to take comments from the public on that compliance timeframe for consideration of a shorter compliance period. During the public comment period, you will have an opportunity to comment on the proposed regulations. And in the interim, we're also working, like I said earlier, also my regional administrator stated, we're working across federal lines and we're working hand in hand with our co-regulators here with the state and also with the facility to try and reduce these emissions prior to the proposed or the final rule coming out. As I mentioned before, we're also concerned about the risk to the worker in this facility and the people who work nearby and go to school nearby it. That is why EPA is also working on a worker exposure rule under another set of federal law that intends to take that action along, and we intend to take that action along with updating of the commercial sterilization rule. The Tennessee Occupational Safety and Health Administration is also available to respond to occupational exposure risk to ethylene oxide as well. Tennessee OSHA is also responsible for regulating worker protection and occupational exposure in the workplace. I have 3 key points that I want to share with you, and that we are working to reduce this risk by working across government with our co-regulators, specifically with TDEC, to reduce ethylene oxide that is coming out of the DeRoyal Industries facility. We are also strengthening our 2 sets of regulations to be more protective of public health. We're also sharing this risk with you today so that you can have the same information that we have at the environment. As I prepare to close, I must speak on accountability. As several of us has mentioned at the onset, we have a responsibility to protect human health and the environment. And at the EPA, we do this by relying on the most current scientific knowledge to develop effective regulations by holding facilities regulations through enforcement and by communicating clearly with you about our work and the knowledge we gain through this work. As my regional administrator said earlier today, and I have to stand with him because he leads our agency, and that is we are committed to continuing to work on this issue until the risk levels are reduced. And as the air director for the Southeastern region of the Environmental Protection Agency, I too take this risk very seriously. And I am committing to you this morning that we will do our part to ensure that our web pages remain up to date on information about the commercial sterilizer rule, as well as the worker protection rule that the agency, and also any steps that the facility takes to reduce ethylene oxide risk in this community. At this time, I just want to thank you for your time and attention. And now I will turn the meeting back over to Erin Jones. Thank you.
Thank you, Caroline. I'm now going to turn it over to Michelle Owenby, who's the Director of the Division of Air Pollution Control with TDEC. TDEC is the permitting authority for the DeRoyal Industries facility. And Michelle will share more information with us at this time. Thanks, Michelle.
Thank you, Erin. Thank you all for coming. My name, as Erin mentioned, is Michelle Owenby. I run the air program for the state of Tennessee, and we do permit the DeRoyal facility. So I thought it might be helpful. You heard a lot from Caroline about what we're learning about ethylene oxide. We are in an existing regulatory environment, as Deputy stated. We work with the science. We try and understand the science. Sorry, y'all. I thought bringing it closer would help, but not helping. It's just cutting out. But as Caroline mentioned, we rely on our federal partners for those resources to understand the science. We are evaluating EPA assessment and working with the Department of Health here in Tennessee to try and further understand this health risk in our community. Our prominent role and responsibility is permit these facilities based on current law. So I'll go over a little bit about the facility. DeRoyal Industries is located on Highway 33. Many of you who are in the community have seen the facility and know that facility well. DeRoyal Sterilization Systems facility is identified as Rural Sterilization Systems, and it's located adjacent to their manufacturing operation. The Rural Sterilization Systems commenced operation in 1902. And as Caroline mentioned, their systems sterilize medical grade equipment manufactured both at DeRoyal and also off-site. Their example products are orthopedic devices, surgical tools, wound care. One of the challenges we have with working with ethylene oxide is currently there are devices that cannot be sterilized. So ethylene oxide provides the opportunity to sterilize that critical equipment for use in healthcare procedures. So at DeRoyal Industries, sorry, y'all, ETO emissions are controlled by air pollution control. And those control devices consist of an acid water scrubber and a catalytic oxidizer. Due to the control devices, ETO emissions from the sterilization operation are reduced 99%. All right, y'all, we'll try this one. That 99% reduction requirement is what's current. It's like, it's just cursed. I apologize for folks online if we're cutting. And then fugitive ETO emissions, as Caroline mentioned, emissions that are not controlled but are released to the atmosphere in various ways through doors and windows. They result from the transfer of products from the sterilization to the aeration operation, as well as in the storage warehouse. As Caroline mentioned, fugitive emissions are currently regulated either at the Tennessee Air Quality Act, which is the state Air Quality Act level, or under federal regulation under the Clean. Oh, got my slides a little bit out of order. We'll go back. So DeRoyal's current sterilization operation consists of sterilizing the product in a multi-step process. And I've got some diagrams that will help you kind of see this. There's a preconditioning, which is preparing the products to receive ETO for sterilization, the actual act of sterilization, and then the aeration, which is the holding of material for off-gassing of the residual ETO. The product then moves to storage and ethylene oxide is introduced during the sterilization step of the process, and this is the only step where ETO is used. However, as Caroline mentioned, we do see ETO, especially in the fugitive context, come later in the process. Next slide. Oh, already went over that one. Go ahead and next slide. All right, so this is the current sterilization process. You can see where I mentioned the preconditioning phase, and then sterilization is the second box. That's where ETO is introduced at the facility. And as Caroline mentioned, you see chamber exhaust and chamber vent, and then you see those vents running to a catalytic oxidation system rubber before they're released to the atmosphere. That's the part of the process where we believe the are well controlled. That's the part of the process that the federal regulation covers today. We've also noted on here where we expect fugitive emissions to occur, and that's where the product is traveling from the sterilization to, as well as in the storage and. Next slide. So in addition to its existing sterilization operation, DeRoyal was issued an air quality permit in January for an expansion of the sterilization site. The sterilization expansion is located in the building adjacent to the sterilization facility. The proposed sterilization expansion will consist of the same process steps as the site. However, the emissions will be controlled utilizing a peak shaver and a catalytic oxidation system. Again, in that controlled part of the process where we expect controlled emissions, we expect their air pollution control devices will reduce. Like the existing operation, unfortunately, fugitive emissions will result from the transfer of products from the sterilization operation to the aeration room, as well as fugitive emissions that will occur within storage and shipping. Next slide. So this is the same diagram. It's just showing the, and essentially the only difference is that they're using a peak shaver, but essentially we have the controlled emissions that are controlled before they go to the atmosphere. And then we have the fugitive emissions, which are not currently regulated, and where those fugitive emissions are occurring. Same points that we would expect in the current operation. Next slide. So as Caroline mentioned, DeRoyal is subject to a federal standard. That federal standard is that what we commonly refer to as the sterilization rule. It's located at 40 CFR Part 63 Subpart O. It is currently getting us the 99% control on the controlled emissions, but it does not currently cover fugitive emissions. Per the regulations, DeRoyal must submit compliance reports on a. We get those in March and September each year. We've reviewed those reports and the division has found DeRoyal to be the current federal regulation. Next slide. So TDIC, since EPA released its risk assessment information, we have been digesting that information and we have been coordinating with the facility. DeRoyal is currently in compliance with the current federal regulation, but they have taken the step of hiring a design consultant to assist with emission control reductions. And we're hopeful to see more information about that in early 23. As Deputy Commissioner Young mentioned, we are Tennesseans. We are in this part of the state. We have a field office in Knoxville. Jill is located out of that field. And we will be working here with the facility and until we see these fugitive emissions and other risk elements come under control. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Michelle. So we know that that was a lot of information that we just shared. And now we want to take any questions that you may have. I'm not seeing any in the online Q&A panel. So again, if those of you participating online have any questions you'd like to ask, feel free to use that Q&A feature to type in and submit. Also here in the room, we will have a microphone that Brandy is placing on the floors just so that everyone in the room can hear your question and also online. So feel free to make your way to the mic here in the room if you have any questions for our panel. So I'm going to introduce our panel at this time. We will have Caroline Freeman, who's our ARD director, who you've heard from, and Michelle Owen, who you just heard from as well. We'll also have Dr. Michelle Zieger from the Agency for Toxic Substances and Disease Registry, or ATSDR. She's coming up to the front. Thank you, Doctor. So let's see, do we have any questions in the room? I see one online. We had a question, what is a peak shaver? So Look down
Thank
to our
you.
air experts for that.
I'm actually going to turn that over to Jill.
The peak shaver, a lot of times they use. Oh, this is- A lot of times they will use that for emergency engines. And it's basically what they're going to use this for is when they run the ethylene oxide emissions, they'll go through the peak shaver to help kind of, I guess, dilute it with water before it goes to the scrubber. So in this case, they're going to try to make it so that you're not overloading the system with the ethylene oxide, and it will do it, or it'll be controlled to the scrubber in a more continuous basis.
Thank you. I do see another question. Are workers being protected?
The model risk that we're talking about today clearly state that focused on the residential area. The agency that focuses on employee exposure or worker exposure as it stands right now is the Tennessee Occupational Safety. But with that being said, we do believe that there is a risk to workers who are working in this environment on a daily basis, whether or not that exposure risk exceed the OSHA levels or not. I am not aware of that, and I would prefer to defer that question to someone from Tennessee.
Thanks, Caroline. Can you make your way to the mic? Thank you. Just so that everyone online can hear too.
My question is, if you're in the 80s% range with the fugitive exposure, and in the teens with the other, whatever the like. Common sense tells me, why would you not put temporary barriers in place to help control that? Reduce that. You can put permanent barriers. What are you doing with temporary barriers?
So for those online, the question was about the fugitive emissions being kind of at the 80% threshold, higher than the controlled emission, and also about barriers. So I just wanted to repeat the question, and I'll turn it to you, Caroline.
Okay.
Excuse me, we would ask all persons asking a question to come to the microphone. Our interpreter is unable to hear and translate. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, I will start with a response, and then I will transition over to my colleague with the state. When we actually take a look at these facilities, I will say that there are commercial sterilizers that have taken steps to reduce their emissions. And as far as a temporary barrier, I would say that I would have to more so refer the facility reps to those facilities that have taken action to reduce the amount of ethylene oxide that's escaping their operations. But, at the EPA, we're not in the business of recommending any particular type of action for the facility, but they do have a responsibility because this is a hazardous air pollutant that we are talking about, and therefore they are required to step up and take action. But keep in mind, like we've said the entire time we've shared information this morning, the facility is in compliance with its existing regulations and with all federal regulations that are on the book. and they're in compliance with their state operating permit. So with that being the case, we're trying to work with our co-regulators at TDEC through the to actually get the facility to step up and take some voluntary act as a good neighbor here in the community to reduce the risk that's actually coming from the facility. So Michelle.
Thanks, Caroline. And I was just going to add to that, that I suspect that's exactly what DeRoyal, their consultant about now. I can't speak for them. I don't know whether they'll do temporary, permanent, but I suspect those conversations are being had with their consultant to evaluate what their options are.
My question is, when you were looking at your 0 to 70 risk range, are you talking about a healthy individual? And what about immunocompromised people and the risks there, if you've looked at that?
Okay, the benchmark that I was referring to, which focuses on a long-term exposure, that is not the only layer, because there are underlying layers listed prior to. So that is only looking at ethylene oxide exposures at the concentrations that we modeled it at. So bottom line, what we're saying is that this is not an acute risk. If someone were to walk outside, they would start experiencing nausea, dizziness, that kind of thing. What we're saying is this is a modeled lifetime risk that applies to ensure that the regulations that we do have in place are in fact protective of human health and the environment. Now that we know that ethylene toxic than we initially thought that it was. In addition to that, we also recognize that some individuals are more susceptible than others. And so therefore, you know, other things come into play when you're looking at those types of risks. You're talking more of a clinical, individualized risk, and that's not the risk that we did with the modeled risk that we have. Okay, so I don't know, Michelle, would you like to add some more? We have two Michelles today.
Hi, everybody. So my name is Michelle Zieger, and I'm a physician with ATSDR, the Agency for Toxic Substances and Disease Registry. And what a lot of our focus on is the human health effects from environmental exposures, issues that may occur with environmental exposures as well. And I wanted to thank you for bringing up that point, because when we talk about population risk versus individual risk, the one thing that we do need to think about is what would make a person more susceptible to an exposure, but also the different factors that come into something like cancer. What adds to the risk for developing something like cancer? And it can be certain health conditions. It can be genetic factors. It can be family history. It can be other exposures in the environment as well. And then lifestyle factors, things like smoking or other behaviors that we all may engage in. So I thank you for bringing that point up. Those individual risks, those are the types of things that we try to look at as well. And important for folks to work with their physicians on concerns that they have and consider those risks as well. Thanks again for bringing that up.
Thank you, Caroline and Dr. Zieger. I don't see any others coming forward in the room, but I did want to, okay. Go ahead. No, I just want to do one quick reminder. We do have a phone. So if you do want to ask a question, just press *9 to let us know. But I just want to repeat those instructions. It's kind of like raising your hand, and then we'll allow you to unmute at that time. But go ahead here in the room.
Thank you all for being here. Is there a cooperation with local commercial or building inspectors in an effort to reduce the risks to the community? I'm new to the area. I moved here a couple years ago, so I'm not as at high risk, but I did intend to rent own. So
Excuse me, can you come a little closer to the mic? I can't hear.
is there a cooperation between commercial and residential building inspectors to reduce the fugitive emissions? Also working with y'all, or is that, I'm not sure if that's something to expect y'all to know the answer to, or.
I think, let me just restate it and see if I'm hitting
Sorry.
where you're going with your question. Are you looking at it from a standpoint, we're saying that ethylene oxide is in the air, it's coming out of the facility, but what about the levels that are coming into the residential structures? Is that where your question is?
Where it's escaping the facility, are there ways that DeRoyal Industries knows how to reduce that, working with building inspectors or
Oh,
like
okay.
things like
As
that?
far as, will the facility understand the steps that they need to reduce the emissions that are exiting their facility? Yes, they will. And not only that, but we also have a number of facilities across the country. Like I said, when the map, I don't know if you were in the auditorium at that time, but on one of the slides, we have a map that shows all 100 of these commercial sterilizers across the country. And out of the 100, we have 23 of them that we modeled elevated risk for a high risk based on information that we collected over a period of 2 years from these facilities and quality controlled with our state partners to ensure that we had, received accurate information. And then we modeled those risks. But, that's just 23 out of the 100. So those other facilities that have put controls onto their facilities, they are part of that industry tech group that are available to provide assistance until the EPA regulations are finalized. So yes, there is a group out there. Now, I can't say an inspector that will come and dictate to them, no. But there are consultants out there that have worked with the industry to put on additional controls to reduce the emissions coming out, or really that are escaping out of these facilities.
May I ask a couple more questions? I'm sorry.
Sure, go ahead.
You had said that the ETO doesn't last a long time in the environment. Should I be concerned? I don't know the history of my home, but it's affected area. If past individuals worked there, would I have a higher exposure? Like, is it a chemical residual in the body that they bring home? Or when they breathe, or I don't quite really understand what that industry does. But if
Okay.
someone had worked there and they lived in my home previous to me, would I be at a higher risk because someone worked there or something like that?
Okay.
I don't know.
Yes, I'm going to defer that question to my colleagues over at.
Yeah, thank you for the question. I just want to make sure I understand. So are you saying that if you, say, for example, you worked in the facility and you were exposed to ETO, or you were exposed somehow to ETO, does it last in your body?
Yeah.
Or
like, is
once
it
you leave
something
the
they bring
area, does
home
it
to
go away?
their families?
Great
and their
question.
homes?
So a number of ways to look at that. A lot of what we know is actually from studying workers. And so we do know that ethylene oxide itself can be measured in the blood. or by exhaled air, but it's got a really short half-life on the order of hours, basically. And so if there was no ongoing exposure, we would expect the ethylene oxide to be excreted, so to speak, over a relatively short period of time. But that's one measure, and that's given that there was no ongoing exposure. The one thing to think about too is that ethylene oxide can come from other sources. So even in communities where there may not be a sterilization facility, there still may be a background level of oxide, a very low background level. So what some of the studies have shown that we all are probably exposed at some level to some level of ethylene oxide. And we do know that smoking can contribute significant source of oxide. But to answer your question about, does it go away quickly? Half-life is pretty short. And so we would not expect, if there was no ongoing exposure, to last months and months and years in your body. Does that help answer that question?
May I ask one? Does the ethylene oxide react with other air pollutants? As like a resident, and you had mentioned studying the weather as it passes, or like if somebody walks by or drives by, I mean, like, or other concerns of things that happen in communities that would be in the air. Does that react with ETO? Are there other substances that are either natural or unnatural to the environment that make the effects of ETO worse?
Okay, if I understand you correctly, you are concerned as to whether or not other chemicals in the environment in addition to ethylene oxide could potentially make exposure to ethylene oxide worse.
Are there like reactions that
Or does it react?
like
Um,
that would make it more dangerous?
What I will say is this: I think your question is in the line of a cumulative exposure, meaning being exposed to more than one chemical at one time. And the way how the Clean Air Act is written, it only allows us to focus on one pollutant at a time. However, we do have some extensive research going on through the Office of Research and Development right now, and they are looking at multi-pollutants and see what kind of exposures to multi-pollutants have on the body. But as of right now, we don't have that information. We're only in a position to where we have looked at one pollutant at a time. I could defer over to, no, you're still the same, yeah. So that's pretty much how we've been looking at air pollution.
Okay.
Oh, most definitely, thank you.
Yes, thank you for those questions. And I'll add on to Caroline's just a little that, we do take a conservative approach when setting these regulations. So again, that does give us a protection for an individual, given the potential for other chemicals to be in the exposure route. We do have another question in the chat. Sorry, it got buried here. Do you feel that DeRoyal is doing everything they can to try and get better control of the secondary emissions? And I want to send this to Michelle just to maybe reiterate some of the steps that the state has been in conversations with the facility about.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for the question. I, again, don't want to speak for DeRoyal, but I would say I think the risk assessment, just like we are, and so they are certainly taking it seriously. They understand that the risk assessment is showing a higher risk within the community. And so I think the first step they have taken is to hire experts. As Caroline mentioned, consultants that have been able to look at controls that can be added to the facility emissions. So I take that as a great first step. I take it as a willingness to take a look at what additional controls could be done. I can't speak to the timing of those controls, but I do expect that we'll get more information from DeRoyal in the coming months.
Thanks, Michelle. I'm not seeing any other questions in the chat just now, but again, if you're on the phone and you want to ask a question, you need to press *9 to let us know. Any other questions here in the room? Or anyone who is online on Zoom, you can also raise your hand to ask a question if you would like. If the Q&A chat's not working. Yeah. Dr. Zieger's gonna go over a few resources with us. And we'll see if
I
there's
just
any other
wanted
questions.
to let you all know that we do have some resources available. There may be health-related questions or concerns from folks or neighbors. And I just want to make you aware that we are available to speak with people. I can be available to speak with people on an individual basis. We have an email address, ETO@cdc.gov, which is email to go through to connect with us. We also know that, primary healthcare providers may not be as familiar with ethylene oxide and some of the health effects. So we have published a resource that's geared towards healthcare providers, a clinician guidance that can be accessed through ATSDR's ethylene oxide website, that you will be able to either direct your doctor towards or print a copy and bring to your doctor. And it helps physicians address questions and concerns about ethylene as well. We have what's called a toxicological profile that goes really into a deep dive of the literature with respect to ethylene oxide and health effects and human data as well. And so that's another resource too. But again, we're available to speak with people who do have concerns as well. And I just wanted to let you all know that.
There is one more question that just appeared. Is there a rep from DeRoyal on hand to elaborate on their focus to date regarding the emissions? I'm not aware of any DeRoyal reps here, but if there's any we don't know and you want to raise your hand, feel free. But yeah, that was a question from the Zoom audience. So we will have a community meeting later tonight too. So not sure if they will be there.
Were they invited?
Thank you. The question was DeRoyal invited to the meeting? TDEC did speak with DeRoyal. They do about the meeting, both this morning and this afternoon. And just want to reiterate, Deputy Commissioner Young provided this. We have an email set up, ask.tdeceto@tn.gov. If you all have any questions, including questions for the facility, please go ahead and send us those questions to that email. We're happy to work either with our federal partners, with the state health department, or with the facility to get those questions answered and get a response out to you.
Thanks, Michelle. I've not seen any more questions online. Any last questions in the room here before we close? All right, well, I'll go through just a few things. Thanks for joining us again today and virtually. We're going to have these meeting slides on the webpage, www.epa.gov/ETO. And then the last part is new Tazewell. Make sure you put a hyphen in between new Tazewell. That will give you our webpage where we'll have the slides and the recordings. And you can also sign up for updates so you can keep up to date on that rulemaking that we were, or any other new information that we get. We'll go to that webpage going forward. Thank you so much for our partners today from TDEC and SDR, and from the folks here at Walters State College who helped us, Mr. Craig and Dean Bolton, with the facility. And now I would like to turn it over to our Regional Administrator Blackman to close this out.
Okay, wow. First of all, we want to just say thank you again for joining us today, but also in giving us your input. So on behalf of Region 4, our partners that were mentioned earlier, and our entire team, we look forward to remaining in contact. We want to remind you, as it was stated by Aaron, that we will be returning tonight for the presentation, but in this capacity, we'll be sharing your questions and concerns throughout the region, and hopefully that will help us to establish more and further communication. It's critical that we understand those lived experiences. And again, I just want to sincerely say thank you to each and every one of you. And I want you to know that we're box. It's important for us to know that this information will be acted upon, and not only allows us to get the most up-to-date information to us and through us, but also back to you all. But it also allows us to update information on risks posed by ETO and what actions continue to be underway or will be planned in the near and foreseeable future. I want to thank again those partners that help us to reduce the risk from the DeRoyal facility, but we also want to engage and continue to engage each of you as we develop new regulations with a benefit, current understanding to the risk proposed by these areas. Mr. Mayor, we thank you so much to the community for your input. Those who joined us online, EPA is committed to working on this issue until all levels and risks are reduced. We thank you so much. For those who will join, look forward to seeing you. If not, we want to thank you, and we hope that you get home to your. Thank you. One show my son lets me watch with him in NCIS.
Thank you, everyone.
Call me in the room.